start with a picture to explain about what we are talking now, and in this way I like to talk about broken assumptions, and that is really like, yes, if you like to see through a window and then you recognize, oh, it's broken, and then you recognize also, oh, probably we need to change something, but we can't use it like that, because then it's really, particularly in the winter time, very cold in the house, and therefore that is really the idea for having this broken window. And now, of course, now we have a bit mixture. And please always consider that we sometimes talk about linear regression, and therefore that I will repeat several times, linear regression. And sometimes we will talk about logistic regression. And logistic regression means always the differences between beta coefficient. Beta coefficient is always used in linear models, and the other is odds ratio. And then, of course, please consider that because we have totally different model assumption, and therefore that is really the tricky part. And when we talk now here in 3.1 about model assumptions, we are only talking about model assumption in linear regression. Please never, if there is an exercise where you need to calculate an odds ratio, never say outliers, homogeneity, linearity, normality, independency. But these 5 words you should really know, because a question about that will always appear. But always you should know if linear regression or if a logistic regression. And in linear regression you need to check outliers, homogeneity, linearity, normality, independency. And in logistic regression you don't need to do anything. Therefore, that makes it also so easy to check logistic regression assumptions, because in logistic regression you only have 3 assumptions. We remember that from the last lecture. Sufficient number of observations, a binary outcome, and independency. These are the 3, and that of course is easy to check. But unfortunately, in linear regression, you have to do more. And you know the dependency, y is explained by a lot of independent variables, and you have that strange formula here. I think everybody really, knows that. And now that is really probably formally, when we talked about linear regression, we always said, the normal distribution should be the exposure, or the outcome should be normal distributed. But now you are really a bit more advanced, and you know it is not the outcome, it is not the exposure. There is only the assumption that the residuals. And now you know also what the residuals are. Do you remember that? It was the difference between the fitted values and the real values. That means that what is missing, what you can't explain with your model. And this missing part must be normal distributed. And that is now the tricky thing. If you look at model assumptions, you always have to check residuals and not the overall outcome and exposure. And therefore, if you do your bachelor thesis, that's totally fine. You can do the normal distribution for your outcome 20 times and at the appendix, and that's totally correct. But now it's not allowed anymore, because you need to do this for the residuals, because that is that one that you really need to do. And therefore, you always need to check for model assumptions looking at the residuals. Okay, and now we check every single assumption. The first one is the outlier. And I'm always starting with the same picture, because that explains totally fine what is the risk from an outlier. you believe, well, that is x and that is y. Do you believe there is a linear association in? And how? Can it be like this? Or this? I don't know. But it is totally easy to see the linearity if you have one outlier. Because in this way you will always, yes, of course, there is a linear association. Perfect. And that is the statistical modeling doing. Because they always calculate the distance, and in this way you will always get something like that. But even though you recognize, oh, if I drop this, it can also be like this, for example. If you have something like that, you will probably believe, okay, yes, there is something like that. But then you have two outliers. And then statistical programming is always doing like that. And therefore, outliers can totally change the overall result. And therefore, that's really also important to understand from where it comes. Sometimes the measurement or the outlier is a typing mistake. That instead of a BMI of 23, of course, a person calculated or put it in 230. And then, of course, it will always be an outlier in all the analysis with BMI, and it was only a typing mistake. And therefore, of course, if you find an outlier like that, check for the typing mistake, because that is the easiest way to correct, because the BMI of 230 is not possible to have. Of course, you can't say it's 23, even though you get some information from the person back, and then you can check it once again. Yes?
So what would you say when all of the observations are together, like the first you did? What would you call that? Can you see a pattern in that, or what would you say?
Well, here you have only an outlier. That's an outlier. That is a normal scatter plot. You have here the x that might be minutes of physical activity, and that might be BMI. That is a so-called scatter plot.
If you see a picture where all the observations are in a circle in the middle, what would you call that?
Normal distribute? No, that is a scatter plot showing that kind. There is no specific name. That depends. I think we will go through all the pictures. Let us define, because that always depends on what you're checking. I think that can we do when we're doing the analysis. No, that is only explaining what is what is an outlier. That was only because of that. Excuse me, it's really right. Wrong. This way. Handling, okay, and therefore the best solution in outliers is to handling it before the analysis, to check really if all the numbers are correct. And if you are doing the analysis, then of course there are different rules available. In some biological or microbial or biological specimen, that is always given that you need to delete the 5% most often outliers, because that might be the case of measurement errors and you can't check for them. That's a systematical procedure that is done in a lot of medical analysis. But of course, that's also, you can always keep it in and do only a sensitivity analysis to check if there are differences in the analysis. Therefore, there are different possibilities to deal with. But of course, we at the first of all will need to check if there's an outlier or not. And we will check this not by a scatter plot, even though you can do it by a scatter plot in an easy way. If you see that there is some really on the other side of the graph, but we will check this by different or other graphs. Okay, homogeneity. What is homogeneity? That's really difficult to see. And now to understand what is homogeneity, I like to show the so-called residual plot. What is the residual plot? Let us talk about that. Because in residuals, you have at first, now I don't like to say something wrong, you have here the residuals, and you have here your fitted values. Let us look on the original. A very simple analysis. What is the residual? That is x1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the residual. This is the fitted value. And these are plotted. And therefore, if you can see if the fitted value is getting higher, would be that bar here. And if the fitted value is getting lower, it will be the lower part. And then, of course, you will always like, because residual can be positive and negative, but you would like to have the residual of 0, because then the model is the best. And therefore, you would probably like to have something like that. That would mean something like that. Of course, that would be the best model. That's never true. Normally, you always have a distribution around. And then, of course, you will have positive and negative residuals. What means homogeneity? Homogeneity means the residuals should be homogene distributed. That means you don't like to have something like this. That you have here more or less all online, and at the end they are distributing around. That is not homogene. And that we would see in residuals as well. Because in this way you will get something like a funnel plot in the residual. And therefore it is easier to look at this than to look at that. You only need to know what is presented. And therefore, the best you should have is a homogene distribution from the beginning to the end of points. If you have homogene all points distributed, then the graph is okay. If you have something like a funnel plot, you don't have homogeneity. And in this way, you can also easily find an outlier. because the outlier with the 230 DMI will be here as well. Because then the residual is also very high. And therefore, that is really the way how you can check for the outlier in the residual plot. Of course, you can also check in the scatter plot. That is also a very nice possibility. Both is possible.
Can I just ask you?
Yes?
So, I just need to hear it one more time. So, when you're looking at homogeneity, is the points are around the line?
Exactly. They are homogeneously distributed around, not a line. There is no line, excuse me.
Okay.
There is no line. You can't see it. They are homogeneously distributed in this graph. And you can't see any pattern. A pattern could be that they're really like a funnel plot distributed that you only have here in the funnel plot. They can also be something like square distributed, or doesn't matter, but it should be really spread around. That's important. And of course, here in this example, that is not homogeneous. Easy to say, because you have a really big variation at the end, meaning here you have a lot variation and a small variation at the beginning, because here you can see the 0, and here of course you also have that at the beginning they're all above 0, therefore it's really not a good homogeneous distributed pattern. Yes?
Now I'm going to ask again, I don't know if you come to it later, but is there a definition of that pattern thing? Because I can see a V, but I guess that's definitely
funnel.
not
It is a funnel. It is explained as a funnel.
funnel. That one.
Exactly. Exactly. That is this one. It's coming from, oh, how it's called. If you have fire, you have that part where the smoke is coming. That is a funnel. And therefore, it is really something like this. Yes?
Would we be allowed to use Westcott rules towards interpretation?
Once again, excuse me.
Would we be allowed to use Westcott rules to interpret it?
What is Westcott use?
Westcott.
Of course, yes, to explain the distribution, but not for check for homogeneity or normality, because that is really not possible, because you can't check for that. Oh, you can also, of course. No, that would be possible. For normality, for example, it would be possible as well. Okay, linearity. Linearity, you can also check in this crazy residual plot. And the residual plot is then once again when you have a linear association. If you have in reality points like this, would you believe you have a linear association? Exactly, because you have something like this. How could you see something like that in a residual plot? Wow. This is positive, this is negative, this is positive. That means you could see it as well here. Because here you have the imagined 0, and then you have here the negative, here the positive points. And in this way, you can see that pattern in the residual plot as well. That means, once again, if the points are distributed widely similar about the graph, you can say, okay, we don't have any problem with linearity. But if you see something like that, it doesn't matter if you say U distribution or V distribution, that's really, you can use whatever you want. It needs to be understandable for me, or it can also be a boat distribution, doesn't matter. And of course, what you would say, a wave distribution, of course, then it must be more. Of course, something like that is also possible. But I think the easiest way, this is not linear. Because you can easily see what's happening here. Yes?
Just for, what should I use it for other than just to pronounce that it's not linear?
That is a model assumption for linear regression. That's really the difficult part in it because you have to check it. It is normally always forgotten in analysis. Also, if you read articles, it is not discussed in a scientific article, even though a good statistician has checked it before. I'm at least writing, and I've checked for the model assumption, but that is really only one sentence. But that is your job as statistician or as scientist that you have to do in beforehand.
So you would just make a small note that says I've checked the model's assumptions and
Exactly.
this is not linear. For example.
Exactly. No, of course not. That's really because if that is the second part from our lecture, if normality or linearity is not given, you can't bring the result. That's totally wrong. And then you have to do something else. But that is the second part of our lecture.
Yeah.
So the total linearity in the residual plot would be a straight line like this, because in the normal plot it would be
Exactly. The perfect distribution would be that, and particularly always in zero. Exactly.
So that is total linearity.
Exactly. That is totally linearity, that is totally homogeneous, because it's not really sharing a pattern.
Yeah, but that one, the one you draw before, that wasn't.
That is not
Yeah.
homogeneous, and it's not linear. Because you can see it's also not homogeneous because it's really distributed differently around the line. Therefore, both assumptions were not fulfilled. And here, of course, you can see also a specific point, and then you can see there is also not something like a U distribution in the fitted plots.
What happens if the residues, so like increasing of positive linearity fitted values? Does it mean anything? Positive linearity? If the residues is increasing with
That you can't see here. That is really the fine part, and you can't see if it is a positive or a negative correlation. That is really the nice part if you check residuals. Because in this way, you don't think about positive or negative association. For a positive and negative association, you need to look in the scatter plot. And the scatter plots only plots y, x, and y. And there you can see, of course, a positive association that is like this, because it shows an increase, or a negative association would be like this, because you have a decrease. But that you can see only in a scatter plot.
No, I was asking like when we are plotting residues against fitted values, do we sometimes get patterns like the residues is increasing with the fitted values? Do we get sometimes patterns?
Yes, that's the so-called funnel plot. No, excuse me, not a funnel plot. That is a change like this. You can see here. It is really, as you get higher, you have a wider range of residuals.
Okay. But that doesn't mean there, like, what is meaning if we get such result, like residues is increasing with increased fitted values?
That means that your model is really not fitting fine because you have at the beginning they are all on the line, and at the end they are distributing around a lot. And then the model can also be something like by chance and not in reality. That is the reason. Okay. Normality. There was something, and that was always the test you have probably heard in beforehand, you need to check for normal distribution. And that, of course, is very important in linear regression. The residuals, and now please think about that. We're only talking about residuals, not anymore about the outcome or the exposure variable. You don't need to talk about that. You only talk about residuals. That makes it simpler, even though it's a bit more difficult to understand. But, and then you need to understand how this plot is working. Because that plot is really well, from the idea, I'm not really explaining exactly what is there, but I will simplify it a bit. Here you have your residuals, and here you have your normal distribution, expecting that what you have, which distribution you have here. And then, of course, if, and they have more or less the same scale. That means this is 1, this is 1, this is 2, this is 2, this is 3, this is 3. And if it is normal distributed, you would expect that for the given normal distribution should be the distribution you have here. 1 should be 1. 2 should be 2. 3 should be 3. And 4 should be 4. That means you have a normal distribution if you get all the points of your observational residuals on a one line, crossing directly the graph. And then you see something like that. And you see, here you see also the pointed line. And that means if it is totally above that pointed line, it's totally normal distributed. And here you can see it is not directly above the line. At the beginning it's a bit above, and at the end it is also a bit above. And in this way, it's difficult. You can say it is not normal distributed anymore. But you will really also sometimes recognize it's better than the other one. And therefore I'm sophisticated, I'm glad with that. But of course, I think at the moment it is really important, and therefore that is really also the reason for the statistic test. If it is not on the line, and if you see something like a pattern, and here you can see a pattern, it is above at the end, and it's above at the beginning, and above at the end, and that is a pattern. First behind, and then you. Excuse me.
So are you saying that there's no wrong answer to this one?
Perfect.
It could be.
That's really very important. Of course, if you say from this line, well, I see a zebra, and therefore it's not normal distributed, that would be not correct. Because I can't see a zebra. But of course, if you explain something that I can imagine, that you see something like a V or something like that, and therefore you believe it is not on the line, I think that's totally okay. And I would also accept if a person is saying it is more or less normal distributed, because even though you can see a small V or a small increase on the beginning and at the end. Okay.
Can it be parallel to the line, or is that not?
No, that is not possible.
That is not one. Okay.
That is not possible by definition, because it will always be a bit above and below. Because that is the reason.
But it's not. If you have this straight line from 0, and but so if it was like
because
straight,
this normal distributed is calculated by that numbers, and therefore it is fitted to the number, and therefore the mean of all will be half of them will be below and half of them will be above. That is by
so it
definition
has to
given.
cross the line.
Exactly, it will always cross the line. That's perfect. Yes. or not only once, but also twice, 3 times, 4 times, across sometimes a lot. Okay, that is normality. Independence. What is independence? Independence is if you have different measurement for one person. I think in this way it's easier to explain. If you have here, for example, you have 8 patients, and they have 6 routine checkups. That means you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, how many? 8 patients. 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 checkups. That means in total you have 40 measurements. But these 40 measurements, is that right? 48, excuse me. 48 measurements, but these 48 measurements are only distributed on 8 persons. And of course, if you have a person, and we are talking about what? A blood pressure. If you have a person like my father, really high blood pressure, yes, of course, well, he's treated for that. But of course, he will never have, well, it's a systolic or diastolic. Diastolic is the highest one. He will never have something like this. He can't have something like that. That means it will always be high. And another person, if I check something from you, I think there will something like this, and he will never get, or she will never get something like that. And that means, in this way, you can easily recognize the measurements are always depending on the persons. If a person has high blood pressure, of course, he will always have high blood pressure. Not such high, but he will never have low blood pressure. And therefore, they are depending to each other. And that is really very important. And unfortunately, that is really the difficult part. There is no residual plot, no cuckoo plot, what is called the normal plot, what we have with this line. You have to decide by your own. And that's really not the fine way, but it's not possible in another way. Okay.
But how would you characterize it if it's not dependent? I'm not sure.
That is a dependent structure, you can understand.
Yeah.
Well, if you have...
But we're taking independence.
You can't check, you have to define it by your own. There is no test statistics. You have to define by... If you have 84 persons, and they are all measured once blood pressure, would you believe that is dependent or independent? If you have 84 persons, and each of them has one blood pressure measurement, is this a dependent structure of data set or an independent structure of data set? Okay, that's, yes?
Wouldn't your end value just be 1? The end value, would that just be 1? So it's independent.
It's independent, you say? Yeah. Okay. No, in this way, because the problem here, if you have dependency, you will say there will be 6 observations, they will always be connected to one person. And these 6 measurements are always dependent to each other. And in this way, you have a dependency structure in the data set. Instead, if you have 84 persons, where only one person has one blood pressure measurement, they are independent, because what person 1 has, and person 2 has, and person 3 has, and person 47 has, are independent to each other. They are only dependent if you have more than one measurement per one person. And of course, there are some exercises on Wednesday about to define if there is dependency structure or not, and we will also go to some examples here later on. And therefore, we can go to that probably later on. But that now really to the question you have had at the beginning. What should we do if we find it's not normally distributed, or it is not like that, or it's not like that? Then, of course, if the model assumptions are satisfied, that's fine. You can get a smiley and say, okay, I'm going further, I can bring the results, perfect. If you get not a smiley, and if you say the model assumptions are not fulfilled, then you have to go further. You have to do something else. And that, of course, it's very important. You need to check them, and if they are not fulfilled, you need to define something else. And of course, if you get something like here, dependent structure, and that is always particular in intervention studies the case. Therefore, it is really a very important analysis. And therefore, we have also directly included, I think, in the next week, the so-called multi-level analysis, because that is really a very nice procedure to deal with dependent structure, and that you have, particularly if you have intervention and like to see if the person are doing more sports, do they have lower BMI on, and you have to check before and after and have different interventions. And that you can do with multi-level analysis. That we will go through next week. This week we only do some very simple analysis, only the so-called random effect cluster analysis or robust cluster analysis. That's a very simple solution, but next week you get the more specific analysis for that. That means you can deal with dependency. That's really important. If they are not linear, you can deal with that as well, because you can change the transformation of your outcome. Do you remember that if you have a not linear, something like that, distribution, and then you do a log transformation? And please remember, in a log transformation, you have, here 1, here 10, and here 100. And then, of course, in the log transformation, you get always the same distance with 1, 10, 100. And in this way, you can deal something like that. Then afterwards, after transformation, you don't have this log transformation where you have only the linear transformation. And in this way, you can change also the distribution from your residuals if you change the distribution from your outcomes or your exposure. If you don't have heterogeneity or normality the same, you can change by transformations, but you can also use something like the robust method that we will choose later on how to do it. And what to do with outliers, of course, first you should check if that is really by mistake. That would be the easiest solution, because then you can correct the numbers. Otherwise, you can omit them from the analysis, or otherwise you can also transform your data, because that is also the case if you can see if the 100 was over there, and after log transformation it is here, you can see that the BMI of 230 will also be less distant to the overall distribution. In this way, transformation can also help to change outliers as outliers. And of course, that is also a problem, because when you check, and you have also some exercises in the exercise, you can check and check and check and check. You will never be, of course, at the end you will say, even though you have something like this, you will say, okay, it's normal, I like to stop. In this way, I think it's really important to consider. Sometimes it takes a lot of time. And therefore, there is also importance in considering assumption. And the most important one is dependency. If you have dependent data, you can't do a simple analysis. That's very simple. Please never do it. If you have heterogeneity, that is the second part you should really check for. Then non-linearity, then non-normality, and then outliers. That means you have really a rank order, and you should check first, second, third, in that order. And of course, that's also the problem. Then you have probably heterogeneity solved, but then it's not normal distributed anymore. But of course, that is life. That's really for life. Okay, but as we said, this kind of analysis is important. I like to talk now about dependency. And I think also dependency gives the most problems in in analysis. Therefore, I like to start with that as well. And of course, I think one simple problem is the so-called individual matched case control study. Do you remember what that was? Now we are going back to epidemiology. Wow. Do you know there was a person, a case control study has cases and controls. And then you have, for example, one male case in the age of 20, of course no, let us 80. And then you have same control must be chosen. That should be also a male person, and it should also be around the same age. And in this way, you have an individual matching because that individual situation is individually matched to that, leading in an end to a pair. And they should be analyzed also together. That means if you see if this person is exposed, you should consider that this person is exposed as well. And this makes it a bit different to analyze it. And in this way, there is a very simple model to analyze that. That is a conditional logistic regression. That is more or less the same as a logistic regression, but it considers the dependency of the structure in a paired case control study. And therefore, that is very often used, particularly in case control studies. And therefore, it considers the dependency of cases and controls in a pair-matched case control study. Because you always have, and then you get here the female of 40 years, and then of course you choose also a female, once again in 39 to 41. That means your controls are more or less the same distribution than age distribution and sex distribution than the cases. But in reality, of course, if you look for breast cancer cases, you will see there will no males in, because you will always choose females. If you look on colon cancer, you will probably also find more males, not also, you will find more males than females, because it's more often in males than in females. And in this way, the control group is not a normal distributed group as you have in the population. It is by definition done like in the case group. And therefore, there is a dependency structure between cases and controls. Because this person is not by chance a female, it is a female because their particular control was a female as well. Their particular case was a female as well. Therefore, they are really depending to each other. And now let us talk about one example. The Parkinson disease and maritime diet. The diet of the pharaohs included much maritime meat, which is exposed to environmental pollutions. A matched case control study was conducted on the association between diet and Parkinson disease. Consider here the effect of whale blubber in the diet. Doesn't matter what that is, it's a kind of contents in the meal. And of course, particularly in Faroe Island, I think there it is very common, or more common than probably in other kinds of the world, to eat that. Okay. What are the clusters here? Because we need now to understand here we also have once again a matched case control study. And what is in that case the cluster? Or let us start first with the outcome variable. What is the outcome? Parkinson disease, exactly. What is the exposure? Well, the whale blubber diet. And now, what is a cluster? The cluster is the pair. That means there is one ID given for the case, and the same ID should be given to the control. And then you get a pair, a case-control pair. And of course, here you see the command, how you can put it in Stata, and that you can see it is more or less similar to that what you do with a logit menu, but you have to put a C in beforehand, therefore you have only to put C logit. And then the Parkinson disease, that is the outcome, should be written as first. Blubber, you can understand what it is, that is the exposure of the blubber diet. Then you have here some confounders like X and gender. Then you have a comma here. That's really important to differentiate, because then you have to define the group. And in that, there was a variable that called matched, and match was in that case the group where you can define the pair. And then, of course, you need also to define in behind that you like to have an odds ratio, because if you put logit, do you remember, then you get beta coefficients but not odds ratio. And in this way, if you put C logit, you would also get only estimates, and therefore you have to put odds ratio in behind to get odds ratio once again. Yes, now your question.
What did you say cluster was? I didn't get that.
The cluster was the pair.
Okay.
Because you have always a pair. You compare the control, the case in the male in the age of 80, and then you get a control in the age of around 80 as well. And this is a pair, or the match group.
Yeah.
And that is a cluster. Okay, and that's a conditional logistic regression, very important, and I think also a very often used analysis in good and lineologists case control studies. What is the time? Should we have a break? I think that's fine, isn't it? 5 minutes break. Ah, it's really nice. Okay. Now there were two questions I like to say that as well, because one person came here and asked, if you calculate residuals, you need to do at first the linear regression. Perfectly correct. Because I forget to say that, but that's really very important. You need to have at first the linear regression where you decide what are the confounders, what is exposure, and then you do the linear regression. And in this regression, the computer calculates the residuals. And with that residuals, you have to do this crazy cuckoo plot and this crazy residual plot, and then interpret it. But they are fit together. That means you have to do first your linear regression and then the residual diagnostics. You can't do it first, because before you do the linear regression, you don't have the residuals. Therefore, you have to do linear regression first. And the other one is the exercises for the next exercise. It is ready today, and therefore I hope that later on I can put it on Blackboard. Then you can have the next exercises again. Okay. No, I will. We don't start to interpret transformed variables. I will jump over that because that is really, of course, if a person later on likes to interpret log transformed values, then he or she should come to my office and we discuss that in detail. It's not important for the exam, and I believe it is really very tricky. And I think more important is now in this way really to understand what happens if you do log transformation or if you do some other transformation as well. And therefore, here we have one example. Here we are talking about 97 countries in the world, and you have birth rates and gross national products, GNP. And data are log transformed. Do you know what that it means? Once log transformed and once again log transformed. I don't know why, but that must sometimes is necessary as well. No, of course, no, log transformed. Excuse me, now I'm really in this way. It means only, excuse me, that was now my mistake because it means both. Here it means it that the exposure is log transformed and the birth rate is log transformed. That means you have two log transformation and then it is said log transformed. Why that is necessary, probably I should really explain that, because I said a log transformation makes the 100 was here, the 10 was here, and the 1 is here, makes it that they are all 10 and 100 have the same distance here. That is a log 10 transformation. And then you recognize in D4 you probably have something like this and the end is here, and then you put it all together and then you have something like this instead. Okay, if you don't do the same here, then of course before you have something like this, and that was really linear, hopefully, I don't know, but then you put this together and then you get something like this, because you have this log transformed but that not, and then you get a log linear association. But you are interested in a linear association. What need you to do the same? Okay, you need, of course, the 100 is below. To do the same here. And then, of course, you get once again back a linear association. And that is really sometimes necessary to do log transformation in both. But of course, then don't try to interpret anymore, because then the beta can't be interpreted anymore. That really doesn't make any sense. Okay, but of course, you can interpret a bit. Of course, here you have, for example, the association of that the gross national product has an effect on birth rates in different countries. And what kind of effect can you see? Really not normal distributed, and that was the same example with this funnel plot. And now after the log transformation, you see it is as well. The residual plot shows there is no really bigger trend in, and of course the cuckoo plot shows really a quite good normal transformation, and therefore I think both slides let us think about heterogeneity. We look here, it looks more or less heterogeneous. Let us talk about homogeneity, not at the same and vice versa, excuse me. Let us talk about linearity, which line? This linearity, because it shows about the linear distribution. Is it linear or not?
Yeah.
No, this one, that's not crazy. You have to check, no, you should know it. Because you shouldn't see any pattern, then you can say it is linear. Crazy. If you don't see any pattern, exactly. Because it is a residual plot. That means you shouldn't see anything. And then you can say, oh, perfect, it's linear and it's homogeneous. And of course, probably we could say you can't see anything. Is that okay? You can't see something like a funnel plot, you can't see a line, you can't see a wave or a fountain. You can see a fountain? Because it's really not possible. And therefore I would say there is no pattern in, and therefore I think it is linear and it is quite heterogeneous. Yeah, exactly, it is homogeneous, excuse me. Yes. Normality. Normality we have to check here. The cuckoo plot. And the cuckoo plot, when the cuckoo plot is normal, or shows a normal distribution, if all the points are on the line. That's really very simple, and in this way you talk about normality. Of course, heterogeneity, homogeneity, normality, outliers. Outliers you can see also in, of course, best would be to look in a scatter plot. But of course, to save your time, you can also look here. Can you find an outlier? I believe not. Of course, you probably could say the 3-4 points above, but of course, I think they are really so nearby all the others, I would say you can't see an outlier. Outlier would be if one point is here, or one point is really far at the top, and all the other points are a bit more switched to the bottom. But in this way, I would say here is not really an outlier. It is homogeneous. The heterogeneity shows that it is homogeneous. Linearity, it is also linear. If you don't have any pattern, you can say it is homogeneous and is linear. That's really crazy, but it is like it is.
And why is
I have, probably we should discuss that, because I have shown at the beginning these two graphs where I tried to figure out.
Is it okay, maybe there are missing 3 dots at the upper right corner. Otherwise it should be.
Exactly. I think this way really, of course, if you would say there are missing 3 dots in the upper right corner, I would say, okay, in this way you could say it is heterogeneous because it is not really. But do you believe that because of these 3 points, you would say you have to do another analysis? That is really also what you have in mind. And of course, if you see really a big pattern, that means really a funnel, or really something like a wave, and it's really strangely distributed, I think that it's important to say, yes, it is really not normal, or it is really a pattern in there, but here only because of 3 missing points to talk about a pattern. But of course you were right. Therefore, that's really also important to consider in the exam. It wouldn't be correct, it wouldn't be wrong to say it is not linear, or it is not heterogeneous because there are 3 points missing in the upper right. Because in this way I could understand it. And I believe everybody can understand it as well. Even though, in my opinion, I would say these 3 points are not so important. But of course, if one person says it is important, it is important. But then, of course, the next step would be, my model is wrong, we have to change it. Then, of course, the following sentence will be also different. And this is really important in that point.
To the example, you mentioned the 3 points that you see, but you don't think they're that important. Would you mention that in the interpretation of your...
I think in this way, how you explain it now, it was so easy to understand. I don't know if it was easy to understand for you as well, but if it is necessary for you to interpret it, I think you can mention it. It must not be, but I think so important is that the reader can understand what you say. It doesn't matter how you explain it. Yes?
This is a question for my own understanding, because looking at the coefficient, it's negative, and the linearity with you is positive, but is that because...
No. Here, now you are mixing the scatter plot with this plot that we have here. Because remember, I have shown before that is inverse normal against the residuals. And that we have explained here before. Unfortunately, I have deleted it once again. And therefore, that has nothing to do with the scatter plot. And you will never get here a negative association. It will always be like that. That is really, but probably you can in the exercise also once again ask about the association. And of course, most common in statistics is the log transformation. And there are 2 often done. The one is the log 10 transformation with the basis of 10, and the log n, that means the natural basis, that means the E transformation. These both are the most often done. Of course, you can do totally different transformation, like for example, the reciprocal that you really divide always by 1, or the square transformation that you square your variable, or the cube transformation that you do something like that. And for example, that is really very nice, probably the only thing that is sometimes done very often, if you adjust for age, sometimes you don't have a linear association. Because it is that at the beginning it is small, then it's increasing, then it's getting small, and then it's increasing once again. That means you don't have a linear association, you have something with 2 changing modes. Of course, no, this is way again. And then, of course, you can easily modulate it in that way that you put h in and h square in. And then, of course, you can't interpret h anymore, because if your h is double squared and plus h, then you get in this, please don't try to interpret it, but for adjusting purposes it's very nice. Because it adjusts in a better way for h if you don't have a linear association. But forget it now, it's later on very important. But of course, square transformation can also be done. Okay. Nonlinearity, what can be done? Because now we have talked about the broken assumption, and we can log transform. And of course, some transformation can also be done like that. If you have flattening curve, or if you have this cube-shaped curve, then you can do a square or cubic transformation of the exposure, even though it's rarely done because mostly you have that log transformed changings. Okay, and that of course also, when using polynomial transformation, keep the original variable in the model. That is the same I have said here, because both models are in. Therefore also the cubic transformation or the square transformation, always you should add that variable plus cubic or the squared variable in. Okay, let us talk about one example. That is carriers in fluid. Carriers rates and fluid concentration in drinking water. And of course fluid concentration are squared transformed. And then of course let us see the result. Here you see at first the squared variable, and then you see the linear regression analysis done with carriers. That means the number of carriers plaques in the teeth. And then of course you can see fluid and fluid squared in the model. And of course in this way you can really only see that, please don't try to interpret that coefficient. And now you get an additional problem. You can't see anymore the association, because fluid in a single variable is minus, but the fluid squared is plus. What is now correct? Please don't ask me, I don't know either. Of course, from the topic I would say as more fluid you have, as less carriers you have, but I don't know exactly. But therefore I would say the minus and of course the normal variable are always the simple association, and therefore this can be more correct, but of course you don't know exactly. And therefore why are you doing it? Does it make sense? To do sophisticated, of course sometimes I really have the idea that some biostatisticians like to get a high R-square, doing whatever they want, and afterwards nobody can interpret it anymore. Of course sometimes it looks like that, and I don't like to say something different. But of course, in this way, it also helps a lot to see that with carriers, in particular from the public health point of view, with fluoridation, you can explain 93% of carriers prevalence. Whew. That's an important information. Therefore, it is really not only senseless to do something like that, even though we know that this association is not linear. That means the first fluor doesn't help a lot, but if you have it continuously and over the whole lifespan, and then of course you probably can explain a lot. And of course that helps also for health purposes to say, okay, we should really try to find fluoridation, to find a possibility to give more fluorids to the population, because it helps a lot and will reduce a lot in carriers.
Gabby,
Yes.
how did you say that you can explain 93% of carriers?
Excuse me, the adjusted R-square.
Yeah. From fluoridation you can explain.
Because you have two variables in, you can't anymore explain as you have to use adjusted R-square to explain the variance. We are talking about linear regression. And then of course the 93 or 93.4% is given as adjusted R-square.
Yeah, but you can interpret that many percent of carriers from fluid. I don't understand that. And that you can explain 93.5.
Yes, because in the model it's only fluid. And with fluid you can interpret the variation of carriers in 93%.
I don't understand what that means in real data.
No, there is not a beta. You can't interpret. You only know that the variation of carriers is mostly explained by fluid concentration of the person. Okay? Non-normality, the next example. Suitable transformation will be also sometimes a log-log transformation. Please remember here, once again, log-log means exposure and outcome. You should transform both. Concave square cubic transformation of the outcome, convex log or reciprocal transformation of the outcome. That only should help you to find potential transformations. Of course, you will soon recognize, as I'm always saying, it is fulfilled. Of course, if it is not fulfilled, please say it is not fulfilled. But if you really only have 3 points, keep it, because then I think it costs a lot to transform the data. It costs a lot, and you can't interpret it anymore. You can't really. It's more difficult to bring the information to the author. In particular, there's also one reason in epidemiology, and of course I'm an epidemiologist, you always have 30,000, 100,000, or even 500,000 of persons, and then it is not really so important if it is normal distributed. Of course, it shouldn't be really totally crazy distributed, but if it is really not perfect normal distributed, it doesn't matter so much. Okay, but what can we do if you try to transform and transform and transform and do and do and do and test Q-shape, S-shape, and I don't know what else, and nothing happens? Of course, still you have another possibility. You can do so-called robust methods. The robust methods are not really the very best solution, but it helps at least a bit. Therefore, if you have a totally crazy distribution, it wouldn't help a lot. But if you have only something like not 3 but 5 points missing, then probably it might really help a lot. Well, if the residual distribution is skewed, or if you have few outlier present, or the residual variation is not constant, I think in this way it helps a lot. And of course, how that is done, it is done in that way that the standard error, is there? No, let us go back to one example, because I like to. You have a coefficient, and the coefficient, beside that you have the standard error. And the standard error, do you remember, or the bridging course person probably remember, is the standard deviation from different studies you do. It explains a bit the variation in the data set you have. It is one of the very important estimates for doing statistics. And the standard error depends on the p-value. No, you need the standard error to calculate the p-value, and you need the standard error to calculate the confidence interval. And therefore, the standard error is the most important part for getting a significance or for getting the confidence interval. Therefore, it is very important. And the so-called robust methods are not working in changing the coefficients, but they're doing the standard error a bit more wider, or considering the insurance of the data. That is the idea from the robust method. Therefore, it is not really the solution for everything, but it helps a bit to get a more trustful confidence interval, or a better or worse, or more correct, not better or worse, more correct confidence p-value. Okay, let us go back. And there are two different possibilities. There is a so-called robust standard error, where the standard error is later on really based on the residual distribution. I don't like to explain how that is done, but it's really a crazy method. And then, of course, please remember, wasn't that, who developed bootstrapping? Wasn't that the Danish? No. It was Efron who developed bootstrapping. I think that is really a very nice idea, and I have that that graph I like to show to you. because it is really a very nice idea to get something like a standard error, because they estimate the standard error from a theoretical basis. They believe we do our study once and once and once again. That means they have the idea, they resample their data. That means we have now a study of 100 persons, and then we search the same persons with the same probability to get the same once again. But of course I get a new sample. And then of course you do it 1, 2, 3 and 100 times. And in this way you compute every statistic, and then you sum them up, and out of this summing data you get the new standard error. And that's really a nice idea to develop a new kind of standard error, because normally the standard error, please remember, that has something to do with normal distribution, and it's really tricky to analyze and tricky to estimate. But of course it is done also with the assumption that is in the data set, that you consider normal distribution. And this bootstrapping method don't have any assumption. And therefore it makes it really nice or possible solution if the model assumptions are not fulfilled. Because then, of course, if you need normality, in particular for estimating the standard error, you need normality, then use the bootstrap method, because there the assumption is not in. And that makes it so nice to use that robust methods. And of course there are there might be other possibles, other robust methods available, but in Stata you have only these two, this bootstrapping and this robust method available. Okay, then let us look. Here you have the robust method. Oops, excuse me, not the bootstrapping, but the robust method. And in comparison, I really choose the same model without robust. And that is now really nice to see what is the difference. And that is really now you can see, if you use the robust method, the changings are not the estimates, they are 100% the same. The estimates, because they are calculated in the linear regression model with least square method, that's always the same, you won't change it. But the standard error in the not robust method is calculated by considering normal distribution, and you remember probably, the more we forget it, it's not important. But in the robust method it is based on other methods, not basing on normal distribution. And therefore you can see, in that way, you can see that all standard errors are tighter, or smaller. That means, please remember, I like to explain it to you. Do you remember how to calculate the confidence interval? 95% confidence interval. It is always the same. Please remember that. It is the estimate plus minus if you don't believe me, you can always calculate it by your own. Please remember that is the U distribution, the normal distribution, the 5% confidence. Therefore you have a 95% confidence interval. The estimate, in our case, is it always this one? If we now look for height, 0.72, 0.72 plus minus 1.96 multiplied by I can't read it, I can look here, 0.26. That was the normal model. And the robust model multiplied by 1, 4. What can you consider out of that? You can see the normal linear and the robust method. The robust method shows a tighter confidence interval because the standard error is lower. And of course, a tighter confidence interval means at the same time higher significance. Of course, here none is significant, but you see that the p-value, of course, it was wrong. You see, if you do a robust method, it is getting more significant. And that means if the model assumptions are not fulfilled and you get a not significant effect, it might help to do a robust method, because then it is considered that normal distribution is not really fulfilled, and then you might get a significant result, even though the estimate will be the same. Okay, that we can. And here you can see also the same in the bootstrap method. And you can see what is the difference. Let us talk. The estimates are once again the same. But the arrow, the standard arrow, is not as tight or is not as small as in the robust method. But of course, if you ask me which value I believe most, I would always say I believe most in bootstrapping. I think that's really a very good method, that even though the results might not getting significant, because it is not as positive thinking as a robust method, but I believe it's a better one. The very last, but that is really only the introduction to the over next lecture. Or do you have any questions? Because now I was running a lot. The robust cluster standard error. Now there is a word that is called cluster. Cluster has something to do with dependency. Because remember, before we have talked about conditional logistic regression and the pairs, where we said they are clustered. They have different, because you have both women with the age of 40 or males with the age of 80. And that have you in cases and controls. Yes, is that right? They are clustered. Then you have also something that is clustered if you have the 8 patients with each 6 measurements. That means you have 8 clusters, because you have 8 persons and each of the 8 persons has 6 measurements. That means you have 8 clusters. That in this way you would say each person is a cluster. Now we can also go in and say, I'm doing an intervention study in 30 schools, and in these 30 schools we always choose 5 classes. We have also clusters, because this class, the one class in school number 1 will probably totally different to the second class in school number 3, because school number 3 is in a big city and has a lot of foreigners in, and the other one is a small town, and only Danish persons are sitting there, which really totally change some habits or some situations in the school. And therefore, here you can talk, you have 30 clusters of cities, and in each city 30 clusters of schools, and in each school 5 clusters of classes. Excuse me, once again. 30
clusters.
30 schools,
At each school has 5.
and in each school 5 classes. That means you have 30 clusters of schools, because you can imagine that a school in Copenhagen and a school in Bramming will be totally different. And of course you might also imagine that the school class A, where you have all the crazy persons in, totally differ to school class B, where you have all the intelligent. I don't know if something like that happens, but you know there are differences in classes. And because of that, you have also 5 classes here, or 5 clusters. That means we are talking now about cluster. And cluster is really a synonym for dependency. And of course, that you can easily understand if you have a class where you have, excuse me, we have some black persons here, but of course you know that probably if you have a class where is a black person, a pupil is a black pupil, they will totally differ in comparison to deal with foreigners than persons where they are, classes where they are not in. And therefore you understand that a class is a cluster in explaining something. If one class would have experienced the death of a pupil, they will differ totally differently with death than another class. And therefore that is really classes explaining really clusters. And schools, of course, also. And then, of course, you need to, you can consider these classes or these clusters also in so-called robust method. That means all these forms, means pairs, means these 8 patients, and the several measurements, all these school types are different forms of clusters. And all these forms can be used also in a robust method, but then adjusted for the cluster. That means you have to put the cluster variable in behind. And of course, please remember that variable or that model we have done in beforehand about conditional logistic regression analysis. That means you can do several analyses in several ways. That's really always tricky. But here you can see, you can do it also with the robust method, using a cluster and define what is a cluster. And that was the variable explaining the pair, or that was named match variable. Whew. I hope, no, that can be deleted because that will be done next week once again. Yes, but I hope that was really a lot now. Excuse me for being so fast at the end, but I like to stop just in time. I believe a lot of problems will disappear when doing the exercises, because then you will really repeat once again all the parts.